Hey, what's up? It's Wick for Xiaomify, and today I've got the Mi11i, yet another phone in the Mi11 series. This one is actually very similar to the regular Mi11, but it is definitely quite a bit cheaper, so some compromises must have been made, but let's dive in and find out if it's any good. Let's go. So here it is, the Mi11i. In the box we'll find a little SIM card ejector tool, a basic protective case, some user manuals, and a USB-C to headphone jack adapter. Below that we'll find the Mi11i itself. And below that a USB-C cable and 33 watts wall plug. And that's about it. The Mi11i is 163 by 76 by 7.8 millimeters in size, weighing in at 196 grams. On the front, it's got a 6.67-inch Amoled display with a 2400 by 1080 pixels resolution, 120 Hz refresh rate, a 360 Hz touch input rate, and a peak brightness of 1300 nits. It's covered with Gorilla Glass 5 and it's got that pinhole dot designed selfie camera with an aperture of f2.45 and a 20 megapixel resolution. On the back, it's got a 108 megapixel main camera with an aperture of f1.75, 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera with an aperture of f2.2, and a 5 megapixel telemacro lens with an aperture of f2.4. On the inside, it's got a Snapdragon 888, comes with 8 gigs of DDR5 RAM and 128 or 256 gigs of UFS 3.1 storage. On the side, it's got the power rockers and the on-off button with the fingerprint scanner in that on-off button. It's got dual speakers that support Dolby Atmos. On the bottom, it's got a dual SIM card slot and USB-C port. And on the top, as always, it's got an IR blaster to use it as a remote controller, which is always nice to see. So, first things first, Xiaomi has kind of been confusing people with this line, as now the Mi11i, being yet another phone in this Mi11 lineup, is pretty much the same as the Redmi K40 Pro Plus, as that was launched in China, as is the Poco, which is just like the K40. It's really getting hard to keep track. At first sight, the Mi11i also has a lot of similarities with the Mi11. Sure, it's got the same processor, but the display is different. It has a straight display, so it doesn't have those rounded corners as on the Mi11. It's slightly smaller. It has a slightly lower resolution. It has a 25% lower touch input sample rate, and it's slightly less bright. So the display is definitely a bit different here. The 11 and the 11i look to have the same camera, although that one is different as well, as the Mi11 has optical image stabilization on the main lens, which the i doesn't. And the ultra-wide angle has an 8 megapixel sensor, whereas the 11 has a 13 megapixel sensor. The 11 also has a slightly bigger battery, faster charging, it supports wireless charging, which the 11i does not, and the fingerprint scanner, which is under the display in the 11, is in the power button on the i. Also, the 11 has those Harman Kardon speakers, which we won't find on the i. So, at first sight, they look very similar, but there's some distinct differences between the two. So now that that's out of the way, how is the camera on the Mi11i? Well, here's some photos that I've taken with the regular lens on the Mi11i, and they're really not bad. I've taken quite a few okay shots with it, both during the day and in the evening. I do notice they have a bit more noise, especially at night, but it was kind of okay. It wasn't all that disappointing, although I definitely got better shots when comparing a photo of the Mi11i with the Mi11. You can see that the Mi11 looks a little bit better, but the difference, especially during the day, is not that huge. Video is surely less stable though. Whether I'm shooting at 8K, whether I'm shooting at 4K, you can really see that it's not that stable. I found the video on the Mi11 to be a little bit more stable, as that does have some optical image stabilization, but the quality isn't all bad on the Mi11i though. At night, I didn't have the best results, but I wasn't really expecting that, to be honest. The ultra-wide angle is also pretty good, especially during the day. I've got quite a few good shots with it, but it is a lower resolution than on the Mi11. At night, this one does get a lot more grainy. The video during the day is quite good, it looks quite smooth, but you can see that this one is a lower resolution, some more detailed things look a little bit more smudged out, a little bit more fuzzy, and at night it really got a lot more noisy, as we've just seen. When comparing the ultra-wide on the Mi 11i with the Mi 11, I found the Mi 11 again to be quite a lot better, but it also has more megapixels, and I was kind of expecting that one to be better. The macro lens is quite good. I tried this out with a few shots right here, and well, those are not all that bad. I know, I normally really hate on them, but this one actually gave me some pretty good results, and it's kind of cool to see that you can actually shoot video using this macro. So yeah, macro, it's there. Then we've got the selfie camera, which does shoot some pretty good photos during the day. At night, it's really not that great, but during the day, it gives pretty similar results to the Mi 11. Video is alright, it's not as stable as we've seen with some other phones, but it's not bad, although it's also nothing very special. Then how is this phone in use? Well, in daily life performance, it's really quite like having the Mi 11. It's fast, it's snappy, it's got pretty much the same performance as the Mi 11. I really got pretty much the same results in all the stuff that I did with it as I would have on the Mi 11, and that's just fine. For all daily tasks, it's just good. I've set the display to use that 120Hz refresh rate, so scrolling and interacting with the phone feels nice and smooth. And all things like browsing on Facebook, Instagram, or watching some YouTube were just fine. It does come with a bunch of pre-installed apps which you might not need. It's got things like LinkedIn and AliExpress, Amazon, Netflix, and a bunch of games. It's really not that much, and I personally don't have any problem simply just deleting all of these. It doesn't really take a lot of time, but I did want to point it out. As with all Xiaomi phones, this one came shipped with MIUI 12 and probably soon might get 12.5. And it's got all the features that you might expect from MIUI, and I personally actually like their OS quite a bit. As it's the global release, it also comes with all the Google apps pre-installed like Gmail, Maps, Photos, Google One, YouTube, and the Google Play Store. It's pretty much got the whole suite of Google apps, and again, if there's any stuff here that you don't use, it's easy to just delete those. I also had no problems playing a game like PUBG on its highest setting, with best graphics, the highest frame rates, and even the best audio quality. I played these with a Bluetooth controller, and it was actually a good experience without any noticeable lags. Sure, there's some known problems with the Snapdragon 888 that can overheat it, but I really haven't experienced that while playing games. So how is the audio on the Mi 11i? Well, the audio is definitely not as good as on the Mi 11, but seeing it does have dual speakers, it does give a nice stereo spread, which sounds pretty good with gaming or music. So here's a little recording of the speakers of the Mi 11i. So I did notice that there's a little bit of distortion when I played the music, so it's really not as good as the Harman Kardon speakers on the Mi 11, but I mean, for just games and watching some videos, it's not bad. Then how is the microphone? Well, let's have a listen.
Hey, what's up? It's Wick for Xiaomify, and this is what I sound like through the Mi 11i. Let's go.
Microphone again, not the best, but it's okay. So yeah, generally the Mi 11i is yet another trimmed down version of the Mi 11, which actually did keep some of the qualities of the Mi 11. I personally like how it's got at least the same processor and a somewhat similar camera setup. I like how it's got the dual speakers, even though they're not as good. And I actually kind of like that it's got the fingerprint scanner on the side. It's a pretty good compromise that I really don't mind too much. I also like how it's been giving me good performance, whether scrolling through the UI, using any apps, taking photos. They were very fast to process, so the performance has been very good for the week that I've been using it. I personally like the curved display on the Mi 11 more than this straight display on the 11i, but that's more of a personal preference. And I also prefer the 50 watts charging, and especially the wireless charging on the Mi 11, as I basically use wireless charging almost every single day. So that's something I've found to be lacking, and I definitely prefer the Mi 11 with that. The camera on the Mi 11 is slightly better and it gave me some better results, especially with the video and with the ultra wide angle, but the camera on the 11i wasn't all that bad, and for some people that might not be too big of a problem, and this could be a compromise they would gladly make to get a slightly cheaper phone. And one thing that I really didn't like is how much of a mirror this phone is. It's so incredibly glossy, it attracts fingerprints like nobody's business, which is really visible when I compare that with my Mi 11 or the Redmi K40 Pro or this Poco. To me, the biggest problem with the Mi 11i is the amount of phones that Xiaomi is dropping in this series in such a short time. I mean, it's got very similar camera performance, maybe when comparing it to the Redmi Note 10 Pro. Although it's got a newer processor in the 11i, but the differences in their ever-growing line of phones is getting very small, with many phones sharing a lot of similarities, which I think is really getting too much. The Mi 11i is launching in Europe, where it will have an entry-level price of 650 euros and 699 euros for more storage, and it should probably start popping up in stores quite soon now. So, that's about it for the Mi 11i. What do you guys think? Is this something that you want to pick up, or do you prefer the Mi 11, which I think definitely has some benefits over the i? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below this video, and don't forget to leave a little thumbs up to show me that you liked it. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, know that you probably should, because I'm doing a lot of videos about Xiaomi and the Xiaomi ecosystem right here on the Xiaomify channel. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see y'all soon. Peace!